Sounds good. I want to thank Sharon for offering to run this training session for us. And I look forward to listening in so that I can take over and do it myself next time if necessary. And it's good to see you, Sharon, even if it's
You
only
too.
this way.
Hopefully we'll start getting little bit by little bit getting out of quarantine, hopefully sooner than later, right?
Yeah. I'm right here. Keep going. I'm just
Okay.
grabbing paper.
Okay, all right. So the session tonight is going to be pretty high level. We're not going to go into a lot of depth. Sometimes we'll dip in, to a few issues a little bit deeper. But I would have to say the overall purpose of the training is just to give you an overview and insight as to the key processes of how the board works with the superintendent and amongst each other board members, since the board, is 7 members that acts as one, right? We can't do things independently. So this is going to hopefully give you some more insight of how we have traditionally worked as a board. And with that having been said, everything is always up for discussion with the 7 board member team. If you see something as we're going through this, you're like, that doesn't make sense. Gee, I wonder if this would work. That's a great topic to bring up with your board members to see if you want, if something would work better. So with that, boy, I guess when how has it been 7 years? When Dr. Fessler first came, I happened to be board president. And one of the things a board president will do when there's a new superintendent is to sit down and say, how are we going to work together? And it's not a wide open. We had a document from the Illinois Association of School Boards, something that they use in their trainings of how boards and superintendents can work together. So we started with that, but we clearly said, you know what, we don't think the model they used, we think we can improve upon it. So the model you see in front of you and that I'm going to go through is what we came up with. Although this goes through, it gets reviewed every year by the board and the superintendent. And we've made changes or tweaks every year. So it is a living document. As we learn more, do more, understand more, this changes to reflect that. So you'll see that there's kind of some light circles in the background. So it is a continuous loop. It replicates the annual school year. So you could really start anywhere in this circle, but I'm going to start in November, on the November square. And so we're at a point where the school year has begun. And can you read that? Does it need to be larger? Actually, I can't get mine. I don't know if you can hear me, Ben, but right now it won't let me there.
Yeah, I have a copy in front of me. I'm good on view.
You may want to go the other way, Sharon. So if you hit Command 0, are you on a PC or on a Mac right now?
I'm on a PC.
Okay.
I don't know what just happened here.
So just click done right there.
There we go. Okay.
And then it actually kind of works the opposite. So if you go up to view, or there's
Robert and Chris, can you both read it from where you're at, or does it need to be enlarged a little bit? Chris is okay. What about Robert?
I could use it being a little bigger. Yeah.
Okay. There's you see next to the print. So you could, yep, that you go that way. So actually, so if you click off, there you go. Keep going.
There we go.
It's weird because it's actually what you're doing is you're reducing the size.
The opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another icon over next to the print icon, which is now like microscopic. So if you were to click on that, then that would raise it up. But anyway, you're good. You got it. And just to let you all know, I muted your microphones just because there was a little bit of static in background. So I do that again. If any of you want to talk, just so you remember you're on you'll be on mute. So you can either unmute yourself or do like Chris recommended, hold the space bar when you talk. But just so you know, because sometimes there's a little bit of a cross noise and that can get hard to hear. So
Okay.
I'm going to mute all of us except for Sharon again, and then I'll step out.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. So if you think at a very high level, how the board and the superintendent work together in terms of a process, this is it. So the board is responsible, right, for setting direction, understanding the community's needs, putting together a strategic plan, but it's the superintendent that runs the day-to-day operations. But there needs to be a way for the board to understand how are things going with the district, with those strategic plans that they have put forth. So that's, you know, kind of the 100,000 foot level we're talking about. So this, in this example, as I kind of go through this, say the school year has begun, right? And in November, so that box that shows November, the way the board and Dr. Fessler, since he's our current superintendent, have agreed is that in November, he's going to come and give the first of 3 trimester updates on what's going on in the district that relates back to the strategic plan. So in this case, now I don't have, and rightfully so, I don't have access anymore, but you could actually click on those links, first trimester SLT strategic plan, you know, update, and the student growth data. You could click on that and it would actually go to those reports that were presented to the board. So that's the first of 3 trimester updates. Then in the January, February timeframe, the superintendent and his team have worked on putting together a resource allocation plan and programming for the next year. So they're reporting on the current year, but already planning for the next school year. Then in March, a second, and you'll notice that the trimester updates, if you can see that, are kind of in green. That's try to highlight that those all go together. So in March, there's a second trimester update that will relate back to the strategic plan. But then there's also, that's when we are at the board, I shouldn't say we, that's when the board is looking at doing the superintendent evaluation. And he or she will do a self-evaluation, which the board receives in advance. And then there's a process that the board president will run and some separate meetings for gaining, you know, feedback and putting together that evaluation. So that's in the springtime. Then in May, the board will receive the 3rd trimester update. And in addition, you'll see that there's in red, the year 2021 strategic plan focus area discussion 1. So in May, you're receiving a 3rd trimester update for the existing school year that you're in, but then the superintendent is going to start discussing focus areas for the next school year. So you're already, you know, thinking about, are we going to stay with some of the same focus areas that we're working on, or some doing well, where now they're going more into maintenance mode, but there's new areas to bring in. It's the initial planning for the major goals for the next school year. Then in June, you're going to have a second discussion of those based on whatever the feedback was of the board from the first discussion in May for the next school year. The superintendent will come back and have updates, and you'll have a second discussion. There's also a review of internal student growth data, because by then, hopefully we've got from the state, from the standardized testing to review. And then there's also the board self-evaluation, which is at the underneath June, it's the very first item. That's something where, if you think about it, the Board of Education really oversees itself. The board doesn't report to anybody. So there is a time, and this is common for all Illinois school boards. It's not something unique to District 59, where the board will do a self-evaluation. And there's basically 2 ways of doing it. One is if you have we have from the Illinois Association of School Boards, we have a person that's assigned to us that can do in-house training. The board president can go to if we have questions around a range of things. But one of the things that they do is that for a board self-evaluation, we can do it in closed session if there is a trainer from the Illinois Association of School Boards with us. That's the only time we can do a board self-evaluation in closed session. We can't do it on our own without that reason. If we don't want to have somebody moderate it from the Illinois Association of School Boards, then we have to do it in open session. We traditionally have done it.
How did we do this last year, Sharon?
I'm sorry.
How did we do it? How did we do it last June? Was that in closed or open with the trainer?
Closed. For the 15 years that I was on the board, we always did it in closed. And it's above board. It's not that we're hiding anything to the public. In fact, the person from the Illinois Association of School Board is there to make sure that we stay on topic and don't sway to get into any kind of conversation that we shouldn't be. But yeah, that's how we have tradition. I think most school boards do it that way. That's just from talking with other board members that I know. That's not a scientific, study or anything, but that's my sense probably.
Yeah. Was there ever any pushback from the community at all for doing it that way?
Not that I recall. Janice, do you recall any? She's saying no. Yeah. Mm-mm. But that's something you can think about, and that's a board decision, the 7 of you, of how you want to do it.
I think Art's already scheduled Dee Molinari to come in, although given the situation right now, I don't know where we are with that.
Yeah,
I can check
right.
with Art to see if it's been scheduled.
Right. Exactly. So that's June. So then July, the first thing is the review of the board processes and documents. And that's exactly what we're looking at right now. This, overall graphic of how the board sets direction and gets feedback and presentations from the superintendent as to how our work is going. And then focus area board action. Then underneath that, under July, there's the 2021. That would be the 3rd discussion of the focus areas for the next school year. And that's where you would actually vote on whether to accept those or not. Then we're back up to September, where the superintendent then between July then works with his team to put together the detailed plans to work on the areas that the board just voted on in July. So that kind of keeps that's the annual cycle, if you will, at a 100,000-foot level. So you'll notice that the strategic plan is in the middle, and that's on purpose because that's what everything's focused on. We just put together, got input from the community and, worked quite a few months to put together a new strategic plan. So those will be the focus areas will be focused on based on what's in the new strategic plan. And then you also see the weekly update there. And I was just thinking that probably needs to say bi-weekly now, right? Every other week. They're not happening each week. It's every other week that those come out. Is that correct?
Art had said that he wanted weekly. So we're doing weekly every week except for the week of a board meeting.
That's fine. Okay. But I think you'll find those very useful because Dr. Fessler gives those weekly updates that really gives a lot of detail of what's going on in each of the major, departments that ties then, of course, back to the strategic plan. But it gives you as a board member more of a feel of what is going on, more, not necessarily day to day, but what's, what the top issues are and how they're being handled.
And feel free to send him questions that you have when you read the weekly update. I certainly usually send him at least 1 or 2 comments for every single one. So there's a lot to learn and to understand through those weeklies. And if it's something of general interest, he can forward the answer then out to the whole board. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's fine. So that's a very quick overview of this document, but does that make sense? Any questions before I go on to the next section? It's okay. Okay, great. So that's the major graphical representation of the key, I would say, key components of how the board and the superintendent work together in terms of what's the focus to be working on within the district and how do we assess if it's going well or not. So then, and let me back up 1 second too. The whole reason this whole document came together, also a secondary reason I should say, is that for a board member, it was tried to put as many things that the board is truly responsible for in one place. So you're not trying to find where everything is. So we tried to incorporate that, all right? And I'll explain more as we go into the bottom section of this page where you see the blue boxes at the bottom. So the next one, what I'm going to go into is the board working agreements. So if the top part of this page, the graphical representation, if that's, basically how the board works with the superintendent from the perspective of an annual process, the board working agreements are how the board works with the superintendent more on a daily basis and a more personal level, I would say. So it's between board members and with the superintendent. So I'll click on that so you can see what, and I should ask, did either of you have time to look at any of these? And before tonight, you may not have sent it out, last night, I think. So this will be, okay.
Yeah, I had looked at the working agreements. I think Janice had sent it to us.
Oh, okay.
Right when we started as well.
Okay, great. All right. Let's see if I can go into it here. Just a little small, 1 sec.
All right, Sharon, why don't you hit the control on your keyboard? So look
Hit
for
control.
the 0. So hold control and then hit 0. So that resets your Zoom.
Oh.
And then we can see that much better now.
Great, awesome. Ben, can you always be in the background when I'm working so you can give me little clues of how to work more efficiently?
Indeed.
So we're not going to go through the entire board working agreements. That's something that you can, read through on your own. And if you have any questions, out. But I did highlight in red just a few things that I wanted to point out. So one, this is the board working agreements. And again, this is something that most school boards have. It's not unique to District 59. And when you work with your Illinois Association, and it's, what's her name, Janice? Sorry. Unmute yourself.
Dee Molinari.
Dee, that's right. Thank you, Dee. Dee is our rep. One of the things that you can do in closed session is, review these and discuss how you want to well, actually, because you are a new board with the two of you, during the next board of self-evaluation, you should review these and see if these now with it's a new board with 2 new people, do you still think these are good? Or are we missing things, whatever. So you'll be a part of that review process. So one, under the Board of Education's role and responsibilities, again, identifying values and stakeholder expectations. That was one of the reasons for having the community involved in our strategic planning, is to get that input and to clarify the district direction and goals through a strategic plan, that you have a process, a way of doing that for a school district, for a community, that it's not haphazard. So those are 2 of the major roles of the Board of Education. Like I said, I'm not going to go through each and every one. Going down to section 2, working agreements and communication. Point number 2, the superintendent is accountable to the full Board of Education, not to individual board members. So while individual board members can go and have conversations with the superintendent, and I personally would say highly support that and always found a lot of value in doing that, a single board member cannot give direction to the superintendent, right? The superintendent can only take direction from the full board. So you can go say what's on your thoughts, tell the superintendent, what you like or don't like, have discussions, but you can't actually direct them to do something. That can only happen at a school board meeting in the public with the full board present. So in that sense, the board, going down to point number 4, the board, while their District 59 has over 800 employees, the board truly only has one employee, the superintendent. That's the only person that we are responsible for hiring, assessing, et cetera. So that's a phrase that you'll hear with school board is that, yeah, it's a large district, but the board really only has one employee.
I have a question for you, Sharon, and
Sure.
and Janice too. Are there examples of, without specifics, of like do's and don'ts with that situation with interacting with Art? Because, like, for example, and Janice, I'll email him with my thoughts on or opinions of what I like to see, or here are my thoughts on this. And sometimes I wonder, am I crossing the line, or am I being inappropriate, or what's kind of the boundaries as far as how we communicate with him? Have there been issues in the past where board members have done something that said, can you do A, B, and C by Thursday, or something like that?
Right. I would agree with that we do have to be aware that we can make suggestions or tell him ideas or share with him, but that is not marching orders by any means. And he's free to push back if he needs to, or take it to the full board. I don't think anything that has overstepped those bounds. I think it's great that you've been interested and you've contacted him about things. Just if you remember to CC me on it so I know what's going on, that's helpful. And as for not directing or overseeing any other district staff, Robert, that means you cannot be in charge of your wife. So there you have it. Just want to be sure of that. She wouldn't like that too much.
The one point I'll add to that is that if an individual board member ever asks the superintendent for specific information, gee, can you give me the test results of XYZ or whatever it may be? And you'll see this later on, I've highlighted in these working documents. If we're asking for specific information, Dr. Fessler or whoever the superintendent is should share that information with the full board, because the concept is that whenever is that the full board should be aware of any information that's been given to another board member. You should all have the access to that same information. So that would be something on Dr. Fessler's part that, and then by copying Janice, she knew, it's easy to say, oh yeah, here's the information. It's like, oh shoot, I should have copied the whole board on that. Then Janice can make sure that that happens. But he's usually really good about that. I'm going to scroll down here, and actually some of this will come back to that too. This next one goes right into your question, Robert. So whenever an individual board members request information, he or she will email the superintendent and copy the board president. And this is probably a little more unusual in our district, but Dr. Fessler is fine with board members sending an email to one of the SLT members, but then you need to copy the, email, if you want to email the SLT member or its executive assistant, but you need to copy the superintendent and the board president. And that's that's common courtesy, so that the superintendent knows that that request or comment or whatever it is has been made to someone that reports to him. So that's just a common courtesy.
Some of it also is because there is a restriction on how much time we should be taking away from the work that these senior leadership team members do for board members as opposed to their own job. So that gives Art an opportunity to say, this is too big a request right now or whatever. So he's able to manage the workload of his direct reports.
Right. Kind of along those lines as well, when you get your board packet each month, it is helpful to Dr. Fessler and his SLT team that if you have questions, if you can email him in advance, then that gives him time, to get the answers back to the full board, typically even before the meeting actually occurs. Now, that's not to say you can't ever ask a question at the meeting. Sometimes you'll think of questions that you didn't think of when you were reviewing the packet. Of course, bring them up at that time. But to the extent that you have any question that you think is going to take more time to answer, it might need further research. If you can get that to the superintendent ahead of time, then they'll have time to. They really do a great job of getting those answers, doing the research, and having that answer, back to the board before the meeting occurs.
The other reason to do it too is if you have a question that you want to make during the board meeting and you wonder if it might be somehow embarrassing or would take Art unawares because he doesn't know that
Right.
you're thinking along those lines. It's nice to give him a heads up to say, I'm going to ask this at the meeting, so that he's not, feeling like he's been gobsmacked or something, that he knows
Right.
it's coming.
Right. Like I say, and it does help them prepare. Then they might need to do some research or digging,
Right.
or,
Right.
put just thought
Right.
into the question,
Right.
So yeah. Number 10, I highlighted board members will include the superintendent in any conversations or questions with district staff by copying him in the email. So same kind of thing as above. Number 12, this really says that on a board agenda, if there's any topic that you would like on a board agenda, you just have to ask. It doesn't necessarily mean that it might be on the very next agenda, but if you have something that you want discussed, send that request to the superintendent and the board president. And according to the working agreements in the past that, we've agreed to, it will be on an agenda.
Mm-hmm. And for my own general knowledge, how do we select who presents at the beginning of the meetings when we have different presentations? How are those scheduled or
You
selected?
mean like from the schools?
Right.
Ben, you might be able to answer that one. I think that
They rotate through the.
they rotate by cluster, I want to say.
Yeah, they do. They rotate
not-
by cluster, and then we're
Yeah,
looking at the schools.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you mean the presentations for the student presentations, yes, each cluster goes, and then we try to make sure that everyone has had an equal chance. But it is voluntary by them, so they may have a program they want to highlight. So then they'll come forth and say, we're on the schedule for this, and we have this we want to present. So so each building will voice their interest.
Okay, thank you.
The next one, number 13, external correspondence. So you'll find as a school board member from time to time, you'll get an email from someone in the public. And the way the board has handled this in the past is that when the email goes to the board, whether it's the full board or certain members of the board or whatever, is that the board president will reply to the specific issue, whatever the person was writing about, and that the other board members, then it's fine to say, dear, Mr. Jones, thank you so much for your interest. We'll be, to recognize, the point is to recognize, for you to be able to email back so the person knows that you read the email and are recognizing it. Some board members in the past don't, it's your choice, have done that to respond to the email just by acknowledging that you've received it. Some do, some don't. It's your preference. But the reason why we want the president responding is that there's not a chance that we're responding to the person who initiated the email with different responses, right? Confusing. So we want one person to be able, and many times there's been where, and Janice, I'm going to say this is, when you've been president, where you contacted all the board members, say, this is how I think I'm going to respond to this. Do do you have any other feedback? Are you okay with it?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
was
kind of
just
thing.
gonna say that. I have done that in the past when I really am not sure of how the board feels about something, and I will call people and ask.
Right. The next one is when the board and the superintendent are contacted by, in that case, then we defer to the superintendent to respond to whoever has, you know, sent the email. And again, then board can certainly, individual board members can write back to recognize that you've, you know, seen their email and, you know, have read it. And let's see if I hit anything up. Kind of also now I'm skipping down to 14. If you as a board member ever wish to visit a school, which is totally fine and encouraged, in fact, just ask that you let the superintendent know in advance. And so that's so that the superintendent can reach out to the principal and just make sure there's not something, you know, is there testing going on that day, or, you know, there's 4 classes out on field trips, or, you know, what something that might be going on. It's really just a courtesy so that the superintendent is aware that you're in the school, that he can let the principal know, and to make sure that it's a good time to visit. And also to find out, is there something specific that you want to see at the school, you know, so that then he can let the principal know. And also whenever you go in a school, the principal wants to be able to spend time with the board member, show you around, make sure whether it's just a general tour or there's something specific you want to see, then he or she, you know, the principal can make sure they made time in their day to do that as well. So it's
Also,
another courtesy.
right, in practice, a lot of times it actually comes the other way, that a teacher or
True.
the principal asks you, and so then if a teacher asks you, you're going to want to say you need to let your principal know and ask them if it's okay, and then make sure you as a board member also let the superintendent know that you've been invited in and that you're going to go, because he likes
Yeah,
to
it's a good point.
when you're in school.
Does this include after school events as well? Like if the PTO was hosting an event on a Friday after school?
No, I think
I
if the
don't think so,
PTO
yeah.
invites you, it's okay, but I still would send Art an email saying that you're there. Because it's just better that he knows, you know, what we're doing in case he gets any kind of blowback. It wouldn't be like, oh my God, I didn't know. So it's better that he knows, just like you would at
Okay.
work. Although for
Sure.
Chris, you're your own boss, so the rest of us have always had somebody else to report to.
Good point. Number 17, you might be aware of this already, but board members will only use their district email account when communicating on district business. And believe me, I've made the mistake. I think we've all made this mistake before, where I would say it probably happens if a community member reaches you and they happen to use your personal email address, and without thinking you reply, and then you're like, oh shoot, I needed to actually forward that email to my district email and then reply. Because in the likelihood of this happening probably isn't strong, but it could, is that I don't know if for legal issues, if they ever found you're using your personal email addresses, and then someone could come in and look at your personal emails, right? But so as a protocol, we just always want to use, if you're doing district business, keep it on your district email account. And let's see, what else did I have here?
There might be some case law around that too. I really can't remember now, but some of these things have already been, you know, decided on. And so they're pretty clear that you've got to do that, and for transparency as an elected official.
Yep. So skipping down to it's section 4, working together, the superintendent and all members of the board will. I highlighted respect the confidentiality of the closed session. So that is confidential to board members and the superintendent. There might be a member of the SLT member sometimes do come into closed sessions, but it's just that's closed, confidential, and should remain that way. And you'll get training on closed session too. I should have asked, hey, Chris or Robert, have either of you gone through any of the online training yet for school board members? Or Have you had OMA?
Right. Yes. The
Okay.
two, the two trainings.
Okay, so you did OMA, and then what else was it?
Was it governance basics?
It's governance I went halfway through governance and I finished OMA.
Okay, all right. I was trying to remember if they had one on closed session or not. I remember when I went through some training long time ago, they did, but I'm not going to go into anything on closed session, but Janice, you might want to just take a note that, that's something you might want to follow up with.
Sure.
Kind of learn as you do as you're in closed session. But there are protocols around there, for instance, it has to be recorded and different things that have to happen. And minutes are taken in closed session. The next one I'm going to jump to is number 6. So if you do, and you probably will get contacted by whether it's a friend, somebody that's a parent that you're friends with, somebody in your school, community member that wants to talk about a specific issue about their child. We have something that's called chain of command, and it really what that means is make sure the parent or the concerned citizen is going through the command, which starts with, especially if it's about a student, have you talked to your teacher about that issue? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. Oh, you have talked to the teacher. Okay, well, did you talk to the principal? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. If they have talked to the principal and they're not, still not happy, or they're still concerned, then there would be an appropriate SLT member to go to. And after that, it's the superintendent. So it's kind of like if you get a parent that's concerned about something, make sure that I guess one thing is you don't want to try solve that problem for the parent necessarily before knowing that they have actually gone through that chain of command of who's, involved with their student.
Well, and just to say one thing.
Sure.
Each school is supervised by a specific member of the senior leadership team, the SLT. And so you might want to direct them to that person if they've already spoken to the principal and haven't been satisfied with the answer. You can just simply, ask Art which SLT is responsible for that school. I, for the life of me, don't remember who's overseeing what school.
Yeah, right.
So that would be, a next step. Or if it had to do with a IEP, for example, then it would be Elizabeth who oversees, special ed, so on.
Right. And then the individual, of course, has the opportunity to, that chain of command goes up through the superintendent. They also do have the option and right to come to a board meeting, and speak at the audience participation section. Although if it's something really specific to a student, that's probably not the best way to do it, but that is an option. So just understanding that chain of command.
I have one more point.
Yeah.
That is, if someone does reach out to you, whether it's through the phone or they stop you on the street or they send you an email, I generally send Art, I either forward the email or I send Art a message saying whoever, community member, I don't always identify them if they didn't want to be identified, but they contacted me and this was their concern, just in case you hear about it. And this is the guidance I provided for them so that he knows in case it comes back up through the organization.
Yeah, that's a good point, Janice. The next one is number 7 under section 4. Initially might seem kind of strange. It says the board does not interact with the public during the public comments portion of the meeting. There's a, and I understand why. There's the board meeting is the business meeting of the school District 59 school board that occurs in public. It's not a meeting with the public, right? Two different things. So, but obviously there is a public portion comment, and that is to give our community members a way to speak to the board in public. But that's why you don't see a lot of interaction, because we will take that and we do, I'm saying like using the wrong tense here when I was there, but follow up with the superintendent. He's been very good about letting them know how to follow up or what's happening, or to get more detail, to invite that person to come speak with him personally, to have a deeper conversation. But it's really not the time to have the in-depth conversation at that school board meeting, because it's really, we are trying to do our business in public, right? So you still want to address that concerned citizen, parents, concerns, needs, questions. You want to address that. It's just that that evening is not the most efficient, not the right way to do it.
There are other places where you can. So for example, Sharon, we were going to schedule a community forum.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to
Sure.
be around assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it got canceled because of this, but
Right.
then there is a possibility of doing something called, holding meetings called the Committee of the Whole,
Mm-hmm.
where you could have more flexibility to hear from the community. And in fact, you heard it here first. It was something Art brought up to me when Randy had suggested adding some more meetings to the schedule because we can't get enough done. And so Art came back to me and said, well, what do you think if we make them Committee of the Whole? And I'm sure he's going to discuss it with us at our next board
Mhm.
meeting. So
Yeah.
there will be some other ways that we can get community feedback in a group setting, which is what some of the community members have been asking for.
Right, and we've done coffees in the past. We've done, kind of like open houses. We've done different things. I'm really happy that last year that we discussed and opened up the board committees to the public. So some people have been attending those. So there are other ways, to do it. It's just trying to have a discussion with the public. It's really the business meeting of the board that the public is invited to listen to. And I think that might be, those are the only ones I highlighted. But the one point I want to leave you with here on the board working agreements is the document as you see it, we'll read it, is what the last, prior to the two of you, the last board, that's how we decided to work together. You may agree or disagree with anything on this page, but when you do your board self-evaluation, or maybe another time if it's doesn't have to be just then, but whenever it is that the seven of you, the current board members, will review this, or should review this document and decide, is this how you want to work together, both as a team of seven and with the superintendent? And, keep what you like, throw out what you don't like, and, tweak what needs tweaking. But now it will be your document to support and abide by, whatever you determine it needs to be.
Are the working agreements open to the public? Can someone get their hands on them and read them?
In my opinion, there's no reason why they couldn't. Ben, I don't think they're posted on, are they posted under the Board of Education section of the website? I
I
don't
believe
think,
they're posted, but we've shared them before. If you look at the share setting, this is a document that's open for.
yeah, it's open to the public,
So
but yeah.
in the past, during we've shared those, and I have to go back and look. I can't recall if that was on our website or not, but I know we have shared them before.
But that's a good point. That's if you wanted that to be part of the board section of the District 59 webpage or website. There's a Board of Education section that could be added there if you want to. Yep.
These board working agreements, though, start out by getting guidance from the Illinois School Board Association, and they have something similar, and then we've modified it to make it our own, and it's become this district's working agreements ever since I've been on the board. That's been what, 9 years now, almost about 9 years.
Yeah, they are on the website too. They're on the
Okay.
board page, and it's
Okay, great.
hold on. It says one of the first links is board working agreements, and that's why you see my face in the document now. I got to it through the board page on the website.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Great. And
Thanks.
just my tidbit, when you do go through and approve these or anything within the board governance cycle, just make sure you update it. You'll see at the top, it says board approved revision October 15th, 2019. So you can see when the last time was that we did review and update them.
I have a general question on one of the topics we just left off on with the
Sure.
community comments.
Sure.
I know a lot of times someone will raise comments and then we say, would you like, Art to set up a call with you and follow up with you?
Mhm.
Do we track or know how often those follow-up calls happen or the results of those calls, or does the public take them up on those, or any idea?
I would say sometimes the public takes him up on that, and sometimes they don't. I would say more, if you think of the number of different individuals, I would say more often than not, they do accept his offer to meet with him, right?
Sure.
That's
There's-
not always the case, yeah.
Right. There's a core group that comes to the meetings and wants to have everything answered in public. So they don't take them up on the offer, although they certainly could. So that's the reason why, we'll go to a forum or, other avenues so that if they want a public response, we can provide it to them.
The other thing is I'd
Okay.
say Dr. Fessler's been good. It kind of depends on sometimes what the issue is, whether he gets back right away to say, gee, we did meet and here's what happened. I would say in that sometimes yes, sometimes no, he gets back to us, but always feel free as a board member, if you don't hear, or, during a board meeting, you can say, oh, can you get back to the board and let us know, or follow up with it. Did you ever meet with this person? What was the outcome? Feel free to do that.
Sure.
Okay, we're getting close on time here. So I'm gonna back to the strategic plan, the main document. The District 59 policies, if you see that square, that's just a purpose of District 59 policies. That is the board's responsibility, not the superintendent's. So this is the official board policy manual. The board owns that, everything in it. Now, District 59, along with a lot of other districts in Illinois, through the Illinois Association of School Boards, we belong to something, or we pay for something called Press Plus. What that is that it's a service that the IASB provides, where they ensure that every policy in the District 59 policy manual is reviewed at least once every 5 years. They will forward to us the policies for review. But now, in addition, you'll get updates to policies, I don't know, 5-6 times throughout the year. You'll get a policy packet because laws change. So they will take the lead and say, okay, if X law has changed, does that affect any policies? Educational laws change. Does that affect any policies in our policy manual? So they'll go through and do that proactively, inform us, and then as a board, we can see what those recommended changes are and review them and then approve them. So board policy reviews will happen, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 times throughout the year, maybe 5, 6. But anyway, fairly frequently. Now, once we get the policies for review, we have our own process, what happens internally. And I'm not going to go into a deep dive on it right now, but I'm just going to say that I think it's been working really, really effectively for the last few years, where you'll get a document from Cindy and I'll show what the policy is, highlight what the changes are. As you review it, then there's a space for you as an individual board member to ask a question, make a comment, or whatever. Cindy then collects that, again, because we cannot collaborate outside. You have to be in open session to collaborate, right? So these documents are all individualized. Cindy gets all the feedback, consolidates it into a single document, And when you see it in the board packet, then it'll be an electronic document, policy, suggested changes that have come in from Press Plus, but then you will see what every other board member question, comment is. And you'll also see the response by the SLT member responsible for that policy, or if it's Dr. Fessler. So you'll see comments, responses. I think it works really, really great because then you come into the discussion for these policies to approve, and you already know, what people have asked or concerns and what the answers are. So it makes the discussion go much, much faster. That's all I'm going to say because I know we're running out of time. But so there's kind of an internal process that Janice will guide you through when you get your first policy packet. But yeah, key point being is that somebody does review this proactively outside so that at a minimum, every 5 years, every policy is being reviewed, if not more often, but no every 5 years. And this is something, again, that the board owns, not the superintendent. And actually when you're in discussions a lot of time on whatever the topic is, a lot of times, think in your head, what does our policy say about this? Review what the associated policy is for something and say, yeah, does this work? Or, do we need to update the policy?
And it's about all areas. It can be about drug use. It could be about transgender students.
Right.
It can be about much more mundane things. So it's really important work that we do.
Great. Yep, okay. Hold on. Yep, sorry, I'm getting things popping up on my screen here as I try to, okay. Next one's a quick one. I'm going to the far right-hand corner where it's a bottom right-hand corner where it says board agenda calendar. The agenda, well, items for the agendas for a full working school year. So if you'll see at the top here, Monday, July 8th, 2019 board meeting. They've already started updating this for next year. But so at the July meeting, you know how we were talking about the board governance cycle, that graphic, and we said that needs to be reviewed every year. That's already listed on the agenda. Well, on this one, it was for July 8th, 2019. Let me go. But you can see the agendas for this school year here, right? And if you wanted to scroll all the way down, let me get into, you want to know what was going to happen at the May 11th board meeting, here's the agenda as it's already starting to shape up. So whether you want to look at a past agenda or what's coming up, this is the calendar, as that people add things, especially the SLT members. There's a lot of things they need to bring to the board, and they figure out, okay, what a meeting do I need to get this on the agenda for? Is it an action item? Is it a discussion item? So the point there being, if you ever want to see in the forward what's going to be on an agenda, this is where you go do it. So what happens at the end of the calendar year is obviously this kind of gets copied and carried forward because there are things that happen every year that the board needs to discuss or approve. And things will get taken off as well, but it's just that running agenda that you can have access to. Let me see if I had anything else on that. Okay, I think that's it. Okay. I am going to go next to the new board member orientation and mentoring, which we've actually already accomplished a lot of what's in this document. There we go. I love that. Your new District 59 board started. Well, hopefully you've already been given for onboarding your ID, your laptop, and Google Docs training, if you in fact need it. You have those basics. One of the things I know you've received, as I've been seeing the email, is a few books. I know you guys are busy, I know. But the first one listed, The Global Achievement Gap. That one I highly recommend reading because it really gives you a good flavor of the philosophy of what Dr. Fessler brought to District 59 and when by that board then was something they were very excited about. So this really goes into, it's written by Tony Wagner, who's a professor at Harvard, but who was, in the classroom teacher, has a lot of experience, and it really kind of like what schools could be. So it's a fast read, I would say. It's not difficult. It's not real, researchy, or well, it is based on research, but it's a read. And I guess my only comment would be whether you agree with it or disagree, have parts that you think are good, parts that you don't think are good about it, at least it provides you with a foundation of what the philosophy was, what we were as we're trying to change some things in District 59, what we were going after. Again, you can agree or disagree, but at least you understand what that foundation is.
Well, and it's still relevant. That's still what we're operating as, making adjustments to the relative balance.
Right.
We still believe in this mission and this message.
Right. So I would say, again, the global achievement gap, that's to me the most critical one. The other ones really are supportive of going out and actually visiting schools. These authors have one author, What Schools Can Be by Ted Dintersmith. He took a full year off and went to schools in every state in the in the country to provide examples of success. If you think about what's discussed in the global achievement gap, elementary schools, high schools that are doing just those things and doing really, doing awesome things. Sorry, I gotta take a drink here. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. Okay, let me do a time check. Do you guys want to take, like another 10 minutes? Do you want to got families at home? I want to be respectful of your time. It's okay? Okay, I'll try to keep going pretty quickly here.
It's fine.
Understanding the role of a school board member under those items. That's the IASB, some of the training that they want all school board members to take. The school board field book by Perry Sodawinkle. You might remember his name. Oh, there you got, is that the...
Did you guys get this? It's the school board governance basics. This is a really nice leaflet with just a few pages. We'll see if we can get you some copies. That's really a good summation of some of the things you need to know.
Yeah, perfect. The school board field book by Perry Sodawinkle. You might remember, notice Perry's name. He helped manage us through our strategic planning process. He was a superintendent for, and that's a book that he wrote. I actually have not read that one. Former board member Karen Osmansky read it, and she kept it with her. She was always referring to it. So she found that a very useful resource. And then we just listed what the District 59 actual policy is, 2.20, powers and duties of the Board of Education. That's what it says in our policies about the role of a school board member. And then we've kind of talked about, as you go through number C, new board member training and continuing education. These are just, of course, we talked about the ISBE, their mandatory board training. You've done some of them already. The next one that under there just shows some resources. You're going to, in time, get on so many email lists. You'll be inundated with the amount of school news, Illinois school news, national school news that you'll be, with. But here's some more local ones if you want to reach out and get on their email lists. It keeps going. Go down there. How we work together as a team, we went through that, the board working agreements. How the school board works with the superintendent, number E. Again, we've kind of talked about the board governance cycle, the strategic plan. What I do want to touch base on here is a sample agenda. Let me just click on one of those. And so this goes back a couple of years, but the goes back again to the 7 board members really working as a team. The way the agendas are put together now, it's not set in stone by law. There are certain things that you have to have, action items, public comment, call, we follow Robert's rules of order, so that you have a call to order and roll call. But in terms of how things are presented, what the order is, again, that's up to the 7 board members. If there's something that you want to change, we've done that in the past, where we used to have closed session prior to the main meeting. We bring it to call to order, break for closed session, have closed session, and then come back and do the public comment. And there are reasons for that, which I won't go into, but that got changed by the board. So now closed session is at the end of the meeting, not during, at the front end. What else I want to say here? Oh, the other thing is that not all school districts do it this way. District 59 has a history of doing it, where any item that's going to be an action item, something that the board needs to vote on, is that we have it as a discussion item the meeting prior, so that there's time to discuss it. And then you come back the next meeting typically and vote on it. And because I mean, in a lot of items that are very, routine, that you could probably vote on the same night. But in general, it gives board members, if there's something that really is taking a lot of thought, bigger issues, it gives you more time to think about it. Maybe have additional questions after that would happen to me a lot. We'd have discussed something and I would get home and be thinking about it. And over the next 48 hours, I would come up with additional questions that I didn't think of that night. So that gives me time to forward those questions to the superintendent, think about it through, before I would have to come back and vote on it the next meeting. And there's some topics that might get discussed for 2 or 3 meetings before you actually vote on it. Conversely, there are items such as, so the board has to approve all contracts, right? But it's also a law that says we have to take the lowest bid unless there's some significant reason for us not to take the lowest bid. But otherwise, that's just the law. We have to take the lowest bid. So typically, discussion or whatever contract we're signing, whether it's something having to do with electric or we're upgrading vehicles because they need to be, we got quotes for new vehicles because the others are outdated and the utility, falling apart. Typically there's not a whole lot of discussion because it is what it is. If the staff has done their due diligence in going out for a bid, getting reputable bids, putting together a good quote, or that they put their bids on, there's not a whole lot to discuss typically. I don't know, anything you want to add on that, Janice?
No.
So some items can go really quickly, others obviously do need more discussion. In the consent agenda, are both of you familiar with the consent agendas in terms of, typically they approve the past meeting minutes. These are things that typically you think are not going to need discussion either. So you get to approve them all in one action item. If there is something that you read in the detail of a consent agenda item, you can just ask at the beginning of the meeting. There's when the board president will ask if there's any issues with the consent agenda, you can say, yeah, I'd like to hold 8.01B because you might have a specific question on it or something. So there's still time to bring something out and comment or question on it. But in general, that a consent agenda is for that exact reason. These are items that we don't expect there to be discussion on. And so we can just approve them all at one time. Let me check my notes here. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say on that. Closed session. Okay, I don't think so. Okay. Trying to get you guys out of here as soon as I can. Let me go to, committee assignments. Have you guys talked about committee assignments at all, Janice?
Not yet, although Randy sent me an email asking about that.
Okay,
So we're just trying to make sure we don't do anything that would run afoul of OMA, but I think that we can get your choices if you want to sign up for any of these meetings. And then if there's too many, as many as we want can go to any one meeting, but we need to make sure we can cover them all. So
let me just back up for a minute there for Chris and Robert. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the board committees or not, but there are board committees and there's administrative committees. And the board committees, a lot of times there's something that to have. And sometimes there are ones that we think are important. They may not be required by law, but we think we're important to have. So this is just a document that shows what are the committees, and the facilitator is typically one of the SLT members, its purpose, and then, you know, what board members are assigned to that committee or have scooted over there so you can see that. So who's on the committee? So you see that there's a finance committee, safety committee, facilities, insurance and employee wellness, behavior intervention committee. How far does it go down here? There's a few more in here. You'll see though, as I scroll down.
And there's community participation.
Yes, these are posted so the public can see them and can attend. That is correct. Now you'll see further down here, I don't know if you can see my pointer or not. It says Superintendent's Committee. So it switches from board committees to superintendent committees. So these are ones that are not required, to my knowledge or recollection. I don't think any of these are required by law, but that we find them useful for District 59 and that we have them. And I can't remember, Janice, I don't know if those ones are open up to the public or not. I don't remember.
I'm not sure, to tell you the truth.
But again, big point here, the 100,000 level is that we do have these committees. Here's the document. If you want to know what the committees are, or who's on them, you know, again, this is something the board's responsible for. So that's why it goes on that first governance page, you know, that we looked at the start of the meeting.
I don't think the superintendent ones have to be open to the public, but they're not.
That was my gut feeling, but I just don't remember for sure. Yeah.
Right, I don't think so.
I
'cause he
believe
calls
it also depends, like the communications committee, we have more than 2 members. So since
Right.
there are 3 board members, we have to post that as a
Right.
board
Oh, okay.
meeting.
Yeah, so if they have more than 2 that show up, they have to be posted. So if you decide to show up on something, you should let somebody know that you're coming. In the meantime, I think either before or at the next meeting, I'll be asking people what they're interested in serving on. There's also the other 2 meetings, which is that at the end, Sharon. I keep wanting to scroll your screen.
Oh,
but I
what do you
can't
want to
it.
see? Oh, yeah, sorry. You down
I
here is
think
what you're looking at.
The very bottom, yeah, Ed Red, and then IASB, and those other organizations need somebody to liaison with them. So right now, I was looking at taking IASB, and then we'll have to have somebody on Ed Red, which I might do anyway, but it's important to cover these liaison positions. So if you look on the list, you can look at those 2. And if you're interested in how much time they take, I can certainly let you know.
And Janice, just FYI, since I was the Ed Red rep, they were going to, those were hard to attend because they were like lunch meetings. And a lot of people are working, right?
Right.
So they switched or made it so that people could call into those meetings. They didn't have to be there in person, which helped. Yeah.
Much improved. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
The last thing, then I'm just going to go to the middle bottom rectangle that says professional development. should say board member professional development. The key thing on this page is that District 59 is always, both the board members, superintendent, support professional development for board members. And this document really just talks about how that professional development might occur. So the most, some of the biggies are that there's 2 conferences a year. There's an Illinois school board conference that happens in Chicago the weekend before Thanksgiving. And then there's also a national school board conference that happens different places throughout the country. So while the position, you're an elected official, well, right now you're a designated official since you didn't have to go through, but the board, it's a non-paid position, but it is nice that the district does pick up the costs for these conferences. So those are 2 conferences a year. And then some of the associations, the Illinois Association of School Boards, EdRed, they'll have dinner meetings sometimes with speakers or sometimes with state political representatives, so evening meals with a program or ongoing education. And then Dr. Fessler, other board members often, forward, articles to read that help in learning, understand what's going on, current thought, can't speak anymore, current thought in education or local issues. So, the conferences, the evening meetings, reading all constitute ongoing professional development. But they are all, they're not mandatory. Everybody's got busy home schedules, work schedules. So, if you are interested in attending, have the time to attend, great. If you cannot attend for whatever reason, it's not a red mark. That's fine. It's whatever you can manage in your schedule, in your personal schedule. Pardon?
Typically what the board is willing to fund, or the district will pay for one national conference that's out of state a year. That doesn't mean like Hawaii in Europe. It means somewhere in the continental US. There are some other kinds of conferences that might be of interest to you. So don't think you should just rule them out. So for example, there's some on dual language. There's some on community and family engagement and so on. And then if there's more than one that you hear about in the state, you're certainly eligible to go to that as well. So for example, the Illinois Association of School Business Officials might have some training that's of interest to people who have a finance background and are interested.
The technology one, right, Ben? What's that? I remember it went by ICE, Illinois.
Right.
Yeah, it's now IDEA. They changed the name of it, but yeah, that's in Schaumburg.
It's in Schaumburg, and that focuses mostly on more technology issues.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's other ones like that. Yeah. Okay. So just an awareness that as board members, we always value professional ongoing learning. And that's kind of some of the ways it happens for us as school board members. One document, orientation. There's one more thing I want to show you. We're done. I think it's at the bottom of this document. Okay, so this is the new board member orientation document. That was one of the squares. You'll see under resources, of course, the District 59 website, but there's also a District 59 acronym handbook. Any place you work for, school districts are no different, ton of so Ben, do you know if hopefully that's still updated, right? Or do you know?
Yeah, it gets updated pretty frequently, but I can't remember the last time that.
No, that's fine, but it's on somebody's to do. So
yes.
If you're getting inundated with acronyms and don't want to ask for the third time, wait a minute, what does this stand for? You have a link there to help you out.
I think the acronym handbook's about 40 pages long at this point. Very big.
Would not surprise me.
It'll be a test later.
So back to where we started. Don't want you to feel like you have to walk away tonight having memorized every, every comment I made or Janice made or whatever. It's really to provide an awareness of how we work with the superintendent, kind of our big global process. And the documents at the bottom of this page that the board is responsible. They're there to help us as board members and to take responsibility for. So again, don't feel like you have to, if you have questions, reach out to Janice, other board members. I'm happy to answer a question if that's allowed, if that's kosher. But just really an awareness that it exists and you know what they're for.
Hey,
And
if
now
you
as-
have a few questions, I'm more than happy to have you. Yes, you're on the board longer than me. You know.
I don't think that's true anymore.
Oh, yeah. I think you know quite a bit.
So anyway, so I guess I've not given you any questions. You've had a few questions throughout, but any closing questions so I can, you guys have been very patient. Thank you for your time.
No, this has been great. Thanks for your time, and Ben also thanks for your time as well.
Of course, glad to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule for this and help move this along. At least we don't have to drive anywhere.
Yes, right.
Right.
Well,
And I get to see Sharon, who I miss a lot, even in spite of having awesome replacements for Sharon and Karen, I still miss them as well. So nice.
You're allowed, that's right. Hey, I'm still going through withdrawal myself, so it'll take me a little while to, you know.
Yeah.
But thank you both for applying, truly, you know, and you know, give yourself a year really to go through a full cycle of what a school board goes through. You know, don't be too hard on yourself. You know, it just takes time, and don't feel like, you know, you can't learn and be an expert at everything all at once. It's like anything in life. It just, you know, it just takes time, but don't be afraid to ask for help. And but I know you guys will do great and really appreciate you stepping up. It's awesome.
And take notes too. For example, going through the governance cycle and where it seems to work best and where it seems to maybe need some tweaking, because we've been working through the trimester updates and trying to figure out how we can get all the information we need
Right.
without being too rushed. So
Right.
I think the last crop of new people will probably have more input now that they've been through the cycle once, and especially as we board self-evaluation. But as you guys are going through this, that's really important, because I'm used to doing it the way it's been done. That doesn't mean it's the right way or the best way.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, so
Exactly.
definitely interested in always improving.
Right. And you guys own this, so it's always up for discussion of how to improve it, right?
Don't scare them too
Awesome.
much. They just got here.
Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening, what's left, and hopefully you're doing okay and sheltering at home. My kids have moved back in with me. My kids are in their 20s, but it's kind of been nice having them around. But I hope we all kind of, things loosen up sooner than later.
Right.
Right.
Thank you, Sharon,
All right,
so
everybody.
much.
You're very welcome. Good night, guys.
Great.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Thank you, Ben.
Of
Yeah,
course,
thank you, Ben.
of course.
Thank you, Justin.